Mike, hello, welcome along. Just tell us how you first got involved in this fairly niche area.
Oh, well, I was very lucky because I was brought up with the very best scientists of the lot. I was a primary school teacher, and you and I think nearly everybody with us tonight will know that the best naturalists tend to be aged about 9, 10. And as a consequence, I've enjoyed all my teaching life, luckily in good surroundings. And the children I've been with I've managed to get to really enjoy wildlife. And also, all the time I was learning myself. And I think this is the wonderful thing about what we do. It's a learning experience all round. And so when I finished, I thought to myself, well, what can I do? I could loaf about, which I enjoy doing very much, but otherwise I could do something else. And that was that particular moment that Pete Shirley got hold of me by the ear and said, we've got something for you to do here. And he introduced me to an important hero who's not here, and that was Craig Slawson. He would be here instead of me if he was still alive, but he died this year. And so this is dedicated to him. Now, let's go quickly back, if we can, to the early days of the Trust, before I got on the scene. And here is a recording sheet. You'll never be able to read it. But this is what all those wonderful recorders who they talk about went out and got during the 80s, in the early days. And what we wound up with, of course, in 1992, was a great heap of reports. And this all had to be recorded. And this was the time, of course, when you all know the digital revolution was beginning to take off. There were all sorts of databases, and all the speakers here will have played around with them at one time or another. And English Nature, or as it was, the Joint Nature Conservation Committee, turned up with EcoRecord, which was a package we had to use, and Craig was in charge of it. What happened was then, of course, we got hard to work with all these forms. Incidentally, I love lists. I think they're absolutely fantastic, and we have them all shopping, but at the same time, a list of stuff is very, very valuable. And first of all, we had to deal with all these forms, which meant all the site records and everything, and all the sites themselves were down on the database. Then after that, when we'd done that, we could do some other things. During the first 5 years or so, we've spent most of our time putting the reports of all the surveyors in, but then we got on to other things. And luckily enough, I was able to do a bit of surveying myself, and we did. I think it's important to highlight the collaboration of the Trust with other organisations, and this was a tremendously important one here. This was with the University of Birmingham, East Side survey. You probably can't see it very clearly. That was the University Audit, the Biodiversity Audit of East Side Birmingham. And we did a huge document, the Trust did, working with the university, and that was all input as well, with well over 2,000 species recorded in Digbeth.
What was the significance, though, of the eco-record and the gathering of the records, for example, at Sandwell Valley that you were involved in? Why was that so important? Simply because we've got to put a time, as it were, have a time capsule of where we are at this time. I think that's very important. We've got historic records from Sutton Park and places like that from 100 years ago. We've got to put our marker down for our time, I think. And the Trust has done this beautifully. We're putting down the marker for our time, and we're also got what I love, which is evidence. It isn't perfect, but there's an awful lot of it. Currently, on computer, there are, I think, 2,700,000 species records. That's about one for everybody in Birmingham and the back country, I think, probably, if you look at it like that. This is, it isn't of itself important as a list, but when everybody there starts to interpret it and put it in context, then it is extremely important. And furthermore, if somebody says what's on that site, if a councillor says that, you know, what's the value of that site? Well, you found on it. You then are in a position to present them with a list and reports, and this can be highly significant, much more so than a lot of people rate it. Facts, very important. Yes. Mike, let's have a listen now to one of the current members of staff at the Trust who's got a question for you. Just listen to this.
Hi. So we're all quite aware of the catastrophic decline of insects that have been happening across the world at the moment, and in Europe and the United Kingdom. What is it that we can do as individuals to help reverse insect decline?
And I think that the main thing that we can do, and we've got to do, is to get out of this business of the virtual, which is dogging us so badly at the moment, and into the actual business of wildlife. And I think we've got to make people, or we've got to have an atmosphere where people are actually sensitive to the fact that wildlife has a life of its own. And it also, we've got to get in harmony with that somehow, which means what Chris was talking about previously. We really have got to engage with our green areas, and we've got to start insisting that green areas are intensely important. We've watched them going down like ninepins, and the danger of is more of them will do so. And then we have to get our children and also our adults, in fact our families and our communities, out there practically on them. So walks, all sorts of clever ideas, and once again Chris is an expert on this. Those are the most important things. Habitat conservation is desperately important. Habitat conservation of all sorts within reach of where people are, and somehow contriving to get our families out there and experience the actual wildlife. Virtual wildlife is all over the television and all over the computer. It ain't a patch on real wildlife.
So how can people get involved then? What practical steps can people take if they want to do more than just watch pretty pictures on television?
Every family has got to go out with some kit. I've got favourite kit which I take. Here's one of my favourite pieces of kit, a ball of string. I don't know if it shows up very well on there. The ball of string is absolutely fantastic. Take one in your pocket, but get the family to have one. If you find a tree, you can put a piece of string around it and find out what its girth is and measure it. Trees are incredibly endangered, the larger ones. That's absolutely wonderful to take with you. Everybody's got a camera. Everybody's got an iPhone and things like that. You take them. Here's a wonderful gadget, which we all ought to have. You know, the old trail camera. This is very popular now. You can get them reasonably inexpensively. Put them in the garden and see if you can see Mr. Fox with his white eyes in the middle of the night. Absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't be without it. Lots of things like that. You can take a tape with you, measuring tape. Measuring tape, of course, is if you'll get very posh and you don't like the business of a piece of string, you can always be formal and have a tape which you use, which is absolutely grand and wonderful, and a terrific thing to have in your pocket. And you get into trouble with everybody at home because you've nicked it and taken it out in the field with you. A tremendous amount of engagement by people. The opportunities are there, and we've got to hit them very hard now as we come towards the end of this crisis, I believe, when everybody will be longing to get back to real life. It's an opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, there is an argument, isn't it, that tragic though it has been for many people, that COVID-19 has actually been a boon for our appreciation of the nature, the wildlife on our doorstep.
Yes, I think as everybody in the panel would agree, events always produce opportunities, and the important thing is we've all got to be alert to them, and we have to be alert to other things as well in this business of recording. What we're dealing with is big tech as we go into recording, and it's becoming a bit of a nightmare. We've got conflicting recording schemes. And you've got to watch that you don't lose data. Stuff in the cloud is quite dangerous, and so I've got a recommendation to everybody. Keep your notebook.
Okay, good old-fashioned back to basics. Mike Bloxham, thank you. If people do want to find out more, by the way, about the Eco Record, you can go to www.ecorecord.org.uk. That's www.ecorecord.org.uk. And another way to get practically involved is to use the iNaturalist app, which allows you to record the species that you spot on the go. So my thanks indeed to Mike Bloxham.